So welcome everyone. So nice to have you here with us today. My name is Dora. I'm one of the organizers of Kesher and the other is Sebastian. You can find us both here under the name Kesher. I see a lot of familiar faces. It's very nice that you could join us today. And if you're joining us for the first time, also we want to give you a warm welcome. And I also just want to introduce our project a little bit so you find out what we do. So we introduce Jewish communities from all over the world. We invite speakers who share with us the history, the culture, and the present day situation of Jewish communities all over the world in different cities and countries and continents. And then sometimes we do some special events, which is what we're going to do today. And we focus on some cultural aspect or sometimes on a book of the Jewish diaspora in the world. So today, as you all know, we're going to have, I think, the first time. We've never had something like this before. We've introduced books and organizations in the past, but we've never had a virtual photo exhibition. So we're very happy to have Becky Behar here with us, who offered to us to do this virtual photo exhibition. I'm just going to say a few words about Becky, and then I'm going to pass the stage to her. So Becky is a photo-based artist born in Colombia and now living in the suburbs of Boston. Her richly choreographed portraits and still lifes investigate motherhood, the passage of time, and what we carry through generations. She exhibited at national and international galleries, and her work has been featured in a photo editor, Float Photo Magazine, Fraction Magazine, the Boston Globe, Jewish Boston, and What Will You Remember? She's currently a visiting scholar at Brandeis University's Women's Studies Research Center, where she conducts research in order to develop her photography portfolios. So welcome, Becky. Thank you for being here. And now she will present her photos, and after that, of course, as always, there will be time for questions and comments.
Thank you. Thank you, Dora, for introducing me and for inviting me to speak today and share my work. Over the past year, I have attended several Kesher talks, and each session has enriched my understanding and appreciation of my heritage. I hope this talk today does the same for all of you. So thank you all for joining me. I'm going to start my screen share. There we go. Thank you all for joining me. There are so many people here that I know and so many new people, so I'm excited to talk today and talk about my current and ongoing series, Tu Que Vivas. But first, I want to provide you with some background about me in order to understand my work. For over 2 decades, I have devoted myself to my family, being a stay-at-home mother, raising 3 children, and it wasn't until my eldest daughter left for college that I found the desire and the time to rediscover myself and find my own creative expression. Though I studied photography in high school and college, it was the rich subject matter of family that gave me the material and provides a focus for my work. As a photographer, I weave visual stories centered on motherhood, domesticity, and the link between generations. Photography has become my language, my tool to understand what matters, how I relate to the world, engage with it, and question it. It became natural to then collaborate with my children, and most currently, my mother, to tell our shared stories. Rather than candid snapshots, I construct formal images, creating visual narratives that are both precise documents and imaginative fictions of our lives. For instance, one such project, Seeing You, Seeing Me, which I created between 2018 and 2019, explores my daughter Leah as she was turning 21 and becoming an adult. Inspired by the 17th century painter Vermeer and his use of light, domestic scenes, and familiar female subjects, I collaborated with my daughter and dressed her in my clothing to examine what is passed down from one generation to the next. Each portrait of her inspired a quality which became the titles for the pieces. It is these qualities and values, the intangible, which I hope get passed down. Alongside the portraits are still lifes of quickly maturing fruits and flowers, yet still vibrant and fragrant. Another series, Homespun, The Lives We Stitched Together, began in 2020 when my 3 college-age children returned home to quarantine. Amidst the uncertainty, I watched them knit and crochet and used this as a metaphor for the fabric of our lives, our tenacity, our strength, and our resistance. With each new series, I explore a different aspect of my life. Today, I want to focus on Tu Que Vivas, a portfolio dedicated to both of my parents, both of Sephardic Jewish descent, who imparted a rich cultural legacy that profoundly influences my life and work. I don't want to assume anything here today, so let me preview with some terms. Portfolio or series. I will be using both of these terms interchangeably throughout my talk to talk about a collection of photographs that have a central focus or theme. Sephardic pertains to the Jews expelled from Spain and the Iberian Peninsula after the Inquisition in 1492. Around 100,000 to 300,000 Jews left Spain and settled in different parts of Europe and the Middle East. They integrated with each culture, with each community that they went to. And Ladino, lastly, is the language of Sephardic Jews. It is basically a Castilian Old Spanish mixed in with some Spanish, Turkish, Aramaic, Arabic, French, Italian, and Greek. So Tu Que Vivas is titled after a Ladino blessing I often heard growing up. Tu que vivas, crezcas, engrandezcas como un pechico en aguas frescas. In English, it's may you live, grow, and thrive like a little fish in fresh water. I want to give a little preview that I'm actually talking in Spanish when I say Ladino. My accent isn't very good. I understand Ladino, but Spanish is a language I know well. So that's where I start with that. And I just want to say that what an empowering phrase this is. May you live, grow, and thrive like a little fish in fresh water. For this series, I connect my mother in Florida and my daughter in Massachusetts through time and place to talk about our cyclical Judeo-Sephardic customs. Unlike my other projects where I was a keen observer for the past 2 years, I've also been immersing myself with my subject matter through research on Sephardic traditions of the home. I have surrounded myself with novels, folk tales, historical documents, and cookbooks that discuss Sephardic traditions. I reclaimed forgotten memories with my mother, and I even sent my husband, who was on a business trip in Arizona, to buy me 2 rue plants. They were unavailable at local nurseries during the winter months in Massachusetts, and I needed them to photograph. Rue plants are the queen of herbs in Sephardic culture. I then went on to research home and family life, religious practices at home, cooking and cuisine, textiles and crafts, motherhood and parenting, holiday preparations, cultural celebrations, and contemporary life in the diaspora, always looking forward and back. In order to create simple compositions that would portray layered stories. And what developed is a series of photographs showing a rich history of transmission of traditions as I document what gets passed down, the intangible. I look backward and forward as I question what it means to bring a culture with you. My research and travels to see my mom were constant reminders of the empowered woman in the Sephardic tradition. In Judaism, women have been makers of meaning and tradition in the home. Through my female-centered research, I discovered the term domesticated religion, the idea that women in the home, las buenas mujeres, the good mothers, or nuestras madres, our mothers, were the center and not in the periphery of the male power structure. Women became the keepers of tradition, with rituals aimed towards the preservation, the health, and the well-being of their family members and neighbors. These rituals include creative expressions, cooking, their homemade medicines, and even speech of always watching what they say to only talk of good and concealing the bad. It is the story of resilient, powerful, and graceful women who throughout generations and multiple places to call homes have had to adapt quickly, create and maintain communities while leaving imprints. So welcome to Tu Que Vivas, a collection of images with some Hebrew and mostly Ladino titles. Lador Vador, from generation to generation. My mother holds a portrait of her mother, highlighting generational links. Alfinete de seguridad. We protect ourselves with amulets. Here, my daughter conceals under her dress a sprig of rue and the evil eye. Consejos de vida, life lessons, a book of proverbs or refranes, as it is said in Ladino, that is filled with words of wisdom. Nazar no. Here, my mother acts as a protector from the evil eye. Tradiciones orales, oral traditions. Oral stories that flow through generations, sometimes elusive to the newer generations. ¿A dónde irás, amigos toparás? Wherever you go, may you find friends. Initially, I created this scene with 3 Turkish cups to symbolize my mother, my daughter, and myself. But during multiple trips to Florida, I realized that they also speak of my mother and the large community that she has created. You might have also noticed by now that my mother and my daughter are wearing the same dress throughout. I use this as a visual trick to link them together. Tamagua dulce, sweet imprint. Mamul, or imprinted cookies I bake, inviting you into our traditions and discussing what is passed down. If you look carefully, you will see that there were cookies baked beforehand on the same sheet of wax paper. This talks about the prior generations and the imprints they leave behind. Vadario and Fortuna, fate and fortune. A perpetual Hebrew calendar sits alongside a cup of coffee grindings ready to be read, or filjan as it is called in Ladino. Then there is descendencia, bloodline. Here my daughter looks through a glass filled with a raw egg. It is inspired by the Jewish custom of looking for evidence of blood to verify if it is kosher. Enraigado, rue or ruda, as it is known in Ladino, is a good omen herb. Placed on the pillow of a newborn, tied to a child's clothing, tucked in the bed of a birthing mother, or hung from a doorframe, rue is thought to ward off the evil spirits. This is also the plant my husband brought home from Arizona. Afikoman, found, relating to the Jewish holiday of Passover, where the story is repeated yearly, as is the act of hiding a piece of matzah, later to be found by children before finishing the meal. Likewise, my project continuously talks about what we reveal and what we conceal. I am a little stuck here. Topor remedio, found remedy. Popular medicine was practiced by women up to World War II. Stomach aches, toothaches, emotional and spiritual healing was done by nuestras madres, our mothers. In this scenario, I created from research of the idea of curing arthritis by placing a cross cut on skin, putting a piece of garbanzo bean, which you see lying on my daughter's hand, covering with a fig leaf, and tying it around with a towel. The idea was that physical illness is connected with spiritual causes. Tejedora de consejos, story weaver. Whitework embroidery of my maternal grandmother, brought to us by my aunt, who embroidered in gold her name, place of birth, and dates of birth and death. It's a small cloth which has survived 3 generations, and only recently did I notice the rich embroidery of my grandmother's delicate handiwork. Embroidery was one of her creative expressions, while mine is photography. Echar con 7 llaves. Go to bed with 7 keys. It's a Ladino proverb, and it means to hide very securely an object. While I will talk about keys a little bit later on, I ask myself if these keys are used to open or hide, reveal or conceal. Tehillim, prayer. Tehillim is the book of Psalms. Bendichas manos, blessed hands, hands of knowledge and of patience. Tzedakah, charity. Tzedakah actually means righteousness, and it refers to the religious obligation to do what is right and just and to help others. Mazalosa, fortunate. My mother's name in Hebrew is Mazal, luck. I associate her here with Queen Esther and the Jewish holiday of Purim. Vivir y ver, live and see. Pescado, pescado, fish out of water. Rosh Hashanah is the Jewish New Year, which translates to the head of the year. Eating a fish head is a symbolic and literal way of bringing that to life. Also, words matter, and at the same time when I am talking about someone who has passed, a family member will often interrupt me saying, lejos de aquí, pescado, pescado, far from here, fish, fish, and then change the subject. Hierba buena, good herb. We forget the bad and talk only about the sweet and the good. Mint leaves are placed inside of a honey jar. Sugar, honey, and sweets were central ingredients in Sephardic woman healers. Anav, modesty. Mechitza, divided. Once again, what we reveal and what we conceal. And lastly, espina, spine. When Jews left the Iberian Peninsula in the late 15th century, they believed that they would return and kept their house keys. There is a Sephardic tradition of hanging the key from the homes Jews left during the Inquisition in your current home as a reminder. This time, a symbolic key hangs on my daughter's back, symbolizing what holds us up and what we carry with us and what we leave behind. And the result is a visual narrative that uses photographic techniques to tell my story. The photographs are simple in composition, yet discuss complex and layered topics. Unlike previous series of mine, I purposely maintain a monochromatic color theme with touches of gold throughout to symbolize the preciousness, and sometimes touches of green to symbolize life. And lastly, I use light and shadow, along with placement of objects or the hiding of faces, to discuss what we reveal and what we conceal. My braided narratives, portraits, and performance pieces of daily life, alongside emotionally charged still lifes, all set within domestic spaces, turn personal stories into universal themes addressing change, fears, and desires. By reconnecting and reconstructing the past through memories, stories, and research, I aim to translate them into a contemporary visual language that is timeless, making sense of individual and communal perplexities. Tu que Vivas is a blessing to my mother, my daughter, and the way cultures adapt. It is my hope that they, along with this project, continue to live and grow. This is only a preview of the work that I've done. More images emerge on a regular basis as I continue living in a cyclical frame of mind with family and as I delve deeper into my research. As I select, sequence, and edit the photographs, I also consider presentation and framing. These choices can transform a story. So all of my framed images actually have an evil eye embedded into each wooden frame. And then there are exhibitions. I've exhibited at the Griffin Museum of Photography, where I began exhibiting last summer in Winchester, Massachusetts. Here's a preview of what the wall looked like. I've exhibited in Wakefield, Rhode Island, in an exhibit of 10 immigrant artists for an exhibit called There Are No Strangers. And last December, I got the honor of doing a pop-up exhibition during Hanukkah at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, Massachusetts. And there is so much to be told. I have a list of images that I want to create and a set of stories I want to visualize. And I would love to hear from this audience. And before I open it up to questions and comments, I want to give a special thanks to Kesher for inviting me to share my work today, for the American Sephardic Federation for sponsoring this talk in partnership with Kesher, for Combined Jewish Philanthropies in Boston, who provided me with a CJP Arts and Culture Community Impact Grant, and for the Women's Studies Research Center at Brandeis University, where I have been and will continue being a scholar for the next year. And a special thanks to my daughter, Matilda, who's here with us today, my daughter, Leah, and Emily Bell's teacher extraordinaire, and my artist friends who have patiently watched me and helped me create this portfolio. Thank you so much. I usually keep my website very much up to date with both portfolios and upcoming exhibition events. And I also love to hear from you via email if you have anything that you want to share, any stories, if you want to learn from me, or if you want me to share your work, my work, either virtually or in person. So thank you. Should I turn this off? We're opening it up to questions.
Yeah, I think we can open up for questions. Thank you so much, Becky, for sharing your work with us. And I don't know if they would like to, but I think the fact that your mother and your daughter are here, that's very exciting. So I just, before we get into questions, I want to ask them if they want to say a few words about how this process was for them, or how they feel about seeing these photos, or in general about the work that you do. So if Leah and Matilda would like to share a few words, we'd be super happy to hear from them. Of course, it's optional. We didn't ask them in advance, so I'm just
Sorry,
shouting
but
out
thank you.
Sorry, Becky?
No, thank you. Thank you, Leah, and my mom.
Okay. Didn't want to put anyone on the spotlight,
Okay.
but if they feel like at any moment, then they're more.
I don't mind saying a quick something.
Okay, wonderful.
Hi, I'm Leah. I am Becky's daughter. I have really enjoyed watching her create this project and be a part of it, especially because I have been able to spend more time with her and spend time with my grandmother and get to know her and these traditions. And her work has evolved a lot, and so has this project. So I'm really excited that she's sharing it, and go mom.
Thank you, Leah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for.
And I want to tell Becky, my daughter, that I am very proud of her, that she continue doing what is so nice to do for her, that she do it with heart. And I hope that you continue growing like you are doing now. Thank you for including me in your project. I wish you all the best always. I love you.
Thank you, Mom. Te amo.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Matilda, and thank you, Leah, for introducing yourselves and saying a few words. It was so nice to hear from you. I'm gonna read some questions, but I think I'll let Barbara ask her question. She's been having her hand up, so let's start with that, and then I'll go to the chat. Barbara, if you'd like to unmute, you are welcome to ask. Okay, maybe it was just an accident. I will go into the chat. So question from Marjorie, have you published a book in English with your photos and annotations?
I have not published a book yet. One of my goals this year is to actually make an artist book, which would be a handmade book with these images, but I haven't published them yet.
Thank you. A comment from Suzette, which I think is very nice. This is such an emotional work. I am originally from Turkey, and all this is so familiar to me and brings out all kinds of emotions. So,
Thank you.
And this reminds me of a question that you didn't really share with us, but do you want to say a few words about your family and where they're from and where your Sephardic roots originate from and how you learned the tradition?
Sure. So my family emigrated to Turkey after the Inquisition. My mother was born in Colombia. Her parents were both of Turkey. My father was born in Turkey, but emigrated to Colombia. And both I was born in Colombia, my husband was born in Colombia, as were two of my three children. We've been living in Massachusetts for the past couple of years, but I also grew up in Miami. So there's a long transition of movement between Turkey, Colombia, Miami, back to Colombia, and now Massachusetts.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Are you related to any of the Behars that live in Seattle, Washington?
No, not that I know of. There's a lot of Behars and we're not related.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm a Sephardic Jew from Seattle and was raised there with all of the wonderful Behar family there. So,
Well, Seattle has a wonderful Sephardic tradition, culture, center, which I would love to connect further with.
Thank you, Stan. The next question is from Janet. Where is your next exhibit?
At this moment, I do not have an exhibit planned. I just had some work up in Maine, and I've had work up at the Center for Photographic Arts in Rhode Island, but nothing planned yet. If you go to my website, beckybehar.com, on the homepage, I usually have an image, and below that, I list upcoming exhibits.
Thank you. We will share, of course, Becky's website tomorrow, including this recording, of course. So the next question is from Rachel. She would like to ask you to comment a bit more on the photo of Anav with the head.
So,
Rachel, yeah, go ahead.
It's an interesting photograph, and thank you, Mom, for letting me do so much with you and for Leah, because they really followed whatever I asked them to do. Anav talks about the idea of wearing a wig and being modest after you're married. And it's not a tradition that I keep, but it's a tradition that a lot of my family members keep. And so it was an image of a head that I see wherever I go to visit family members. I see it in the bathroom. I see that styrofoam head sitting in different places. So I wanted to include it to talk about modesty and what we keep inside and what we hold dear.
Do you want to reshare the photo just for a moment so everyone can see with the comments?
Let me just share it. Let me go back to it. Sorry, this is going to take longer than what I thought, but sorry. I need to get it out of this view so I can do it quicker. Oh, wait, sorry. Let me just get out of this view. And I can get it here.
Thank you. Just so that we can all see it one more time with your explanation. I see Bia's hand up, so go ahead, Bia, and ask, and then I will go back to the chat afterwards. Bia? Bea? Okay, if not, then I'm gonna go back to the chat. Um, Sorry, I lost where I was. Is there a special picture that was more challenging than the rest? And do you only use natural light? These are questions from Yafa.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen so I can figure out which pictures were more challenging than the rest. I will also comment that some of these pictures were taken multiple times. And at first it was a little frustrating for me to do, but then I realized that just like Judaism, things get repeated over and over again. So believe it or not, this image was taken at least 3 times. Mom, thank you once again for your patience on 3 different trips. On one time, I changed the background. And then another time, I thought I was ready to use it. And when I went to print it up really large, it's actually 21 by 28. Here's a copy of it. I don't know if you can see this clearly. Is this clear?
Well,
When I went to print it up largely, I realized that it wasn't in focus enough. So I took another trip just to photograph this correctly. And I love seeing it because things change a little bit. My mother's hand position changes, the way she holds things. And for me, they're a record of time. So I think this was a very momentous picture for me. And then others just came around very quickly. But I want to say that this was probably one of my hardest images to make. Do I use natural and artificial light? So when I'm here in Massachusetts, my daughter is really available in the evenings primarily. She works during the day. So I use artificial light for her. For my mother, I really haven't taken any of my lighting equipment with me. So I'm using natural light for her.
thank you. And you partially answered how many pictures you take before you choose the final one, but you can also comment in general. What is your process?
My process is sometimes I will take 10, 20 pictures. I wait for the light to change. So for instance, this image and the one of the cookies, the mamul, was literally, they were placed on the floor. I'm photographing it and I'm waiting for the light to move and to change. So when I felt that I had the right light and shadows, that's when I took the images. So there could be several versions of it. And then I choose which one works best. What am I concealing and what am I revealing and what tells more for the story for myself?
Thank you. What were your thoughts related to the styrofoam hat? Yeah, I think we already you shared about this. Um, or do you no, you explained everything that was to explain about this photograph. Rachel is asking which city in Turkey are the Behars from? Your Behars. She's
Ooh,
from Izmir,
okay.
Rachel.
So my mom has family from Izmir. Her last name was Morhaim, is Morhaim. My father's family is currently in Istanbul, but if you ask me right now what other cities, I do have it listed. I don't have it with me. I'm trying to get my Sephardic citizenship, so I did do a little bit of research. But let's say for now, Istanbul for my father's side, Izmir for my mother's side.
Thank you. I got a comment to acknowledge the raised hands. I called on the raised hands. So if, again, I'm saying that if anyone would like to unmute Barbara or Bia, please go ahead and ask.
Yes, I would like to ask about,
Okay.
we saw an image briefly of a view camera. I'm curious if that is what you were using, and is that by chance been organized digitally? And I'm also curious about what paper you're using for these prints. The images are really quite beautiful, and I appreciate your acknowledgement of Vermeer, but you should take credit for yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is the image that you're talking about. I've had this camera for about 30 years. I finally learned how to use it about 2 summers ago, but it is not the camera I use for my work. I use a medium format digital camera, and I print on archival paper, primarily at home. So I use a Canson rag photographique paper, which is matte in nature, and it has a little bit of texture. I hope that answers your question.
Who is the manufacturer of this archival paper?
Canson?
Oh, yes. Good choice. Thank you.
Thank you.
And there was another question regarding your technique. Do you process your own photos?
I do. I do process as much as I can. And this has all been a learning curve. So, but primarily I process them all myself.
Thank you. And I want to say that there are many, many comments coming in, like how moving and amazing your work is. So please, Becky, later read through the chat and see the comments of everyone. So I'm going to read one that also includes a question. Your images are very moving and reminded me of things my maternal grandmother used to do when I was a child. I love your use of color and shadow, but wondering if you have ever photographed in black and white.
I have not. This is frankly my closest, or actually, I lie. In high school and college, it was primarily or only black and white because I was working on darkroom techniques. And when I did use my view camera, I was also doing black and white because I was using an older technique of printing in the darkroom. For these projects, it's always been in color, and this is probably the closest to a monochromatic theme that I've created. I use these limitations to tell a layered story, but I'm excited in the future to continue using colors.
Thank you. Marvin, please go ahead.
So my mother was from Izmir, and when I sneezed as a little boy, she would say Bivas. If I sneezed twice, she would say Crescas, and for a third time, she'd say Grandes Emanescas. And I was wondering if that was a practice in any other household.
I'm sure it was because if you look up online, and Tu que vivas really was said as salud or God bless you. After
And
you,
this is stand-in, Susan, and the answer is yes, for the Sephardic community in Seattle.
Okay, well, they emigrated to New York shortly after World War II started.
I think all Sephardic people have a version of that saying. When you sneeze, some change it a little bit, but we all have that saying. And Tuca Vivas is also said when you have bad news, before you report bad news, you say Tuca Vivas.
thank you, Rachel, for that.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for sharing in comments also about your own experiences. And Nadia says in the chat, sanas que estés y masal que tengas.
Merci mucho.
I guess it wishes you health and luck, if I'm not mistaken. And Myra says, my grandmother would blow into the mouth of babies in our family after they yawned.
Oh, I've never heard of this one. Okay, I'm gonna write it down. I have a whole bunch of stories that I hear from people, and then I sort of think about what kind of images do I want to create for it.
I never heard of that one.
Very nice. So I think I read all the questions, but if anyone has, Myra, if you want to share about this, I see that you wrote another comment. Feel free to unmute and share about this tradition that you just shared about on the chat. But so I will read her comment. She says that it was to keep away the evil spirits. She also carried an evil eye with her. So that one was also seen in your photographs. So if there are any other questions or comments or thoughts that you'd like to share, then we still have a bit of time. Please feel free to share in the chat or unmute and just ask with your own voice.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm looking down at my wrist where my grandson many years ago brought me a piece of red string. We are not Sephardic. We are Jewish. And the red string also is to ward off evil spirits. and we all in the family wear it. And I remember as a child that my mother dressed me in red many times, and it became my favorite color because it too is supposed to ward off evil spirits.
Yes, that's Kabbalistic.
So
I think.
Uh-huh.
Thank you
I had
for
a question. I had a question as well regarding the styrofoam head in the mask, where you refer to modesty as being your concept here in the picture. But I wanted to know why you used a styrofoam head. What was your thinking about that?
Because I experimented with two things. I experimented taking a picture of a wig, and I experimented with a styrofoam head. And then wig felt too much of using somebody's private part, because that's something that they carry with them every time, and it's used to uncover them. And so I didn't feel comfortable using that into one of my images.
It was more anonymous. It was more anonymous then. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. A question from Yafa. Have you thought of doing something about coffee fortune reading tradition?
So I did do that in this image over here, which is the Fadarion Fortuna. Let me see if I find it here. Talks about the idea of the coffee reading.
Thank you. I see Marjorie raised her hand, so go ahead.
Yeah, my mother, when she was little and they were Ashkenazi, always used to wear a bag of garlic around her neck, and I guess they hung it on the bed too I think it was to ward off disease, which didn't work real well because she got diphtheria. But I was wondering if there's any other plants or herbs that are used traditionally in Sephardic tradition to ward off the evil spirits or illness.
So I would want to say that the rue or the ruta is the queen of the herbs. Garlic is also one of them. And illness was connected with a spiritual cause. And so there were all these things that you would use. So you would use garlic, you would use honey, sweet things to ward them off. If you fell someplace, you would pour sugar in that area to sort of take away that evil spirit. So that would be one thing. I'm trying to think of other foods that I've listened to. Well, there's the fish head to bring in good luck. And then I'm looking at my notes to see what else I can think of. The garlic is another important one. And I do have an image with that. It's just not included in this portrait, in this series right now.
Thank you.
I forwarded you a request to schedule that.
I can hear some people
I'm
who are
listening to
muted. I'm not sure. Joanna, is that or do you have a question for Becky?
Aaron Citizen, who works in IA.
Okay, I think that was by accident. So there is a question. Do you have pictures about cortar fachadura?
Cortar fachadura, can you repeat what that is? Because I'm having a little bit of a...
Yafa, if you would like to share, please feel free to unmute. And in the meantime, while that's happening, I want to do a little promotion. I don't know if any of you have heard about this already, but Kesher, including some of our partner organizations, we are organizing a trip to Spain, which will focus on the Sephardic heritage sites in Spain this November. So we still have a few spots left. So those of you who are interested in traveling to Spain and explore a little bit more about the Sephardic traditions where they originally come from, then please feel free to get in touch with us. Of course, we will send some information about this as well in tomorrow's follow-up email. And Yafa says about Cortar Fashura, this is This celebration is known in Ladino as a Cortar Fachadura. At the Cortar Fachadura, women sewed clothes for the newborn and sang Ladino songs known as canticas.
Yes.
Yeah, when my boy was born, someone told me about this tradition, but I never did it.
Okay, so there's two traditions. There's that tradition of when a child is born, the community gets together and embroiders and makes clothing. And then it happens once again when there's a bride to be. And so what gets created is that a tunic dress gets embroidered in gold at this moment for a bride, preparing her for marriage. And there's this lovely tradition where it's embroidered beautifully. Think about, in this case, it would be sort of a blue velvet dress. There was no idea of you wearing a white dress for your wedding. It would get embroidered in gold, and the bride would continue wearing that dress for all special. Therefore, it's a tunic, it stretches a little bit, or it allows for growth. You would wear it for weddings, you would wear it for your children's bar mitzvahs. And I love that idea. I'm interested in it because for many reasons also, it's then used after that woman passes away, that she's used this dress for the rest of her life. Many times it's used to cover a Torah in the synagogue. So it's a way of the dress and the person and the imprint she leaves behind to continue on in further generations. So it's an honor. It's an honor to do that. But
Thank you so much.
It was the community who did that together.
Thank you. And Adele is asking if you could comment on the image, which is on the last line in the last row, the second from the left.
Yes, this one is called Vivid. And there we go. Vivid y ver, live and see. It's one of my newer images. I'm still trying to find out what the story is for myself and why I'm attracted to it. But I think part of it is that you get this blessing to live, grow, and thrive. And you have an empty vat or an empty vessel to just do whatever you want. And at the same time, there's conditions. So I think this relates to the title. I like the way that my daughter's face, her size changes when we see her within the glass and out of the glass. And it also talks a little bit of the good and the bad without using words. So we live and we wait and we see. Talks about patience, but it also talks about the possibilities in life.
Thank you so much. So I think I've read through all the questions that came in, and I think I hope everyone who wanted to ask managed to ask or comment or share. So thank you so much again, Becky, for sharing your work with us, and thank you everyone for being here today. As I mentioned earlier, we will send out tomorrow the recording of this talk and also the information that Becky shared at the end about her website, where you can follow her further work. So hopefully some of you will actually get to see her proper exhibitions in real life as well. So thank you very, very much, everyone, for being here. I'll pass the closing words back to Becky.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming today. And if you have any stories that you want to share, I love hearing them all. And I learned so much from you, and it inspires me to create more images. So thank you. And I'm always ready and able to exhibit a lot of my work. So reach out if you have any interest or if you have anybody that you can recommend me to. Thank you. Thank you, Dora and Sebastian, who's been hiding in the background.
Thank you so much, Becky. So we will share with everyone your email address, and then if anyone has stories or thoughts to share with you, they will be able to reach out to you directly. So have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone. Good night for those of you in Europe and Israel, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.